A very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM this Wednesday morning. Yes, that's right, it is Wednesday. He says, fully confident that he may be wrong about the day of the week because, you know, Christmas isn't quite over for most people, certainly judging by the traffic this morning. But Christmas is definitely over for the football fan in your life because a lot has happened. The table looks a bit weird since last we were here, Eoin.
Yeah, life looks a bit weird. The Premier League table has taken on a life of its own. There's just so many games and it's like you've got the start of the season, then you've got Christmas, and then you've got the end of the season, basically, when it comes to the amount of crazy games really that we've seen over the last week.
And it turns out Paul Pogba was good at football. Who knew?
Well, we knew. We called it. It was a really hot take here that Paul Pogba was actually good at football. And who would have thought that he would have just turned it on all of a sudden when Jose Mourinho was out of the dressing room? We've seen so many players do this in the past. He's gone full Eden Hazard on this. And like we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here in terms of what significance the whole Manchester United situation has for the future of football, because it's probably largely insignificant. But really, if any other player in the Premier League is looking around at what's happened at Manchester United and they're considering some sort of protests or coup, they're like, well, it's worked out pretty well for Paul Pogba there. It looks like things are going to be a lot rosier in the garden in a couple of months' time. It worked out fairly well for Eden Hazard when he downed tools, if you can use that phrase, under Antonio Conte. The next real test is how Mesut Ozil gets on at Arsenal, and I don't think that'll work out too well for him.
No.
So we might have some balance on the other side, but I think it's been a very, very good month for player power.
I think you need to have your own emoji before you can start pulling that shit, though, right?
Well, that's very true. Very true. Paul Pogba managed to get that down. That's maybe that's why Jose just didn't warm to him, because there was no Jose Mourinho emoji, but the emoji people let him down on that front. Like, Paul Pogba, the performances over the last couple of days obviously have been sensational. The idea, though, that he was never a good player was ludicrous, really.
Well, you can okay, yeah, exactly right. And I'm not going to make that case, but you can see why people thought that perhaps he was square peg round hole. Like, what is the role that you ask him to do on a game-to-game basis that is going to define games and win matches? And then it's like, oh, the thing that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been doing, just get him to do that.
Yeah, well,
see how that works out.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is making management look like the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean it's a bit weird, isn't it? There's like when the first game happened, I was like, oh yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, Steve Staunton did hammer Sweden 3-0 in his first game with Robbie Keane doing cartwheels and Mick Byrne on the sideline going, yeah. It was like, oh, this is easy. But then, you know, week 2 and week 3 kick in and suddenly it's Cyprus whipping us 5-2 and Paddy Kenny's in goals. Yeah,
what is going to be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Cyprus? PSG games?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's not over. This isn't this little run of form isn't going to surely be the new Manchester United. He hasn't just unlocked the keys to like one of the most exciting, interesting teams in world football, has he?
Well, if he has, then the knock-on effect for Jose Mourinho's future managerial prospects are absolutely dreadful.
He gone.
They have to be. Like, he's finished as a manager if this little spark we've seen is real. But we do have to remember that their fixture list has been incredibly fortunate for him. And it's not fortune. Like, they knew exactly what they were doing, getting rid of Jose Mourinho when they did, because they gave the new manager every chance of picking up 9 points from 9 in their first 3 games, which is probably going to happen when they beat Newcastle tonight, should they beat Newcastle tonight. Now, the thing is, like, when it comes to this idea of, say, that front line, even if we leave Paul Pogba for a second, like Marcus Rashford, he's obviously made some sort of improvements just by getting a few years older over the last 2 years, but they've been covered up by, I don't know, the position he's been played or the mentality that Jose Mourinho had instilled in him.
Yeah, you can
and all of a sudden he's exploded over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, you can see that there was like enough players there who were on the verge of doing that. Like, you can see Martial getting much better under a manager who says, oh, you're going to play every week. This is your role. This is what I want you to do. These are your responsibilities. If you don't fulfill them, we'll have a chat about it. If you do fulfill them, I'll go, yeah, good man, well done. As opposed to like the constant edge that you must have been on when you were playing for Mourinho, not quite sure if he was going to throw you under the bus publicly. There's obviously Rashford celebrating again. It's going to be a fairly common sight, I suspect, in coming days and weeks. Michael Murphy is on our YouTube channel going, Keith Earl's 85-metre try, my highlight. Your highlight too?
Yeah, well, obviously, anything really from that game was my highlight. Just smirking, then grinning, and then beaming because the Munster-Leinster rivalry is alive.
Well, you
Despite
know,
a lot of people on Twitter during that game were like, some pundits were saying it's dead.
I know.
And I was like,
I wonder who they're talking about.
Really, you're not a pundit. Was what I was thinking.
I was glad that they weren't copying me in. My timeline would have been not much fun, but yeah, fair play. You know, you win a meaningless game around Christmas, and I see comparisons with the team of 05 and 06. Well done, you won a European Cup for that. They were handing out trophies at the end of that match, were they?
More comparisons with 2008, I think. Hugh Farrelly, actually, in the Daily Mail this morning has done 2008/2018 best Munster 15. So I think those comparisons are also there.
A team who won the European Cup.
Let's not forget this.
A team who won the European Cup, right?
You're speaking obviously as a Leinster fan.
They did win the European Cup. Have I got my years wrong?
You're speaking as if Munster were the only ones that cared about that game.
Oh no, I'm sure.
Night. As if it wasn't the 2-3 cards that were given to Leinster men on the night, that it wasn't, the out half putting the other out half to the ground like a rag doll, which I'm not going to lie was pretty funny. It did bring a wry smile for me. Like, you're speaking as if, Munster were really up for it and they caught Leinster off guard because they don't care.
I'm just saying that, like, it's great that you won a trophy for winning that game. Well done to all the Munster fans out there. Congratulations.
You literally sat in the studio 2 weeks ago talking about Liverpool, saying, what is the point of football if everything has to be gauged by trophies? What is the point in any Liverpool fan supporting their team now if you constantly buy into the Jurgen Klopp has never won a trophy with Liverpool argument? Okay. So this is the exact same argument, but now it's against you, so you're not buying it.
No. They're completely different points. I mean,
no, you can still enjoy Munster beating Leinster, particularly because of how fiery it was.
Absolutely, you can. I've no doubt that you will enjoy that. But do you get a special trophy for winning that game? Is that? Because it seems...
Why do you keep asking that question? What does that matter?
Because it seems as if Munster think that they've arrived now because they won that game.
It's a big step forward.
From the performance in Cast, it is a big step forward, definitely. There was a bit of bite about the team, which clearly hadn't been there 3 weeks before that when European Cup points were up for grabs.
Well, the thing is, if the Cast game was actually refereed properly, you might have had a similar situation to the one that Leinster endured, where the referees were like, this, ping, get off the pitch for 10 minutes, you as well, and potentially even a red card. I'm not saying there was any red card incidents. There was potentially one in the second Cast game. But let's not forget as well the officiating in that game. Let's not be too quick to completely blame that on Munster's mentality.
And Munster shouldn't have had any yellow cards?
Certainly, when you look back in that game, Cast were by far the filthier team.
Against Leinster.
Against Leinster. There was a bit of edge about Munster as well. Don't get me wrong. You can't just absolve Munster of all blame and kind of credit them entirely for what's happened.
Look, fair play. I think it was.
There has been a marked improvement.
It was a huge step forward for Munster, particularly when you think that they still have a man need to come back into that team. And it was great. It was great to see.
It's so patronising, that tone.
It was great to see Carberry nailing all his kicks as well, because there just had been a little bit of that. Questions about that after various games recently. And then it was also good that at the end of the game, they have like long-term injuries coming back in to actually... Tyler Blandell looks fit. Like, if Tyler Blandell and Carberry are your 210s, you've suddenly got the best depth situation in Irish rugby at the moment.
Definitely, that's...
They're fit and they play well. That's an astonishing leap forward from where they've been for the last... since O'Gara left.
Yeah, like the thing is as well, the whole question when you compare the two provinces particularly over the past 12 months is, where is the depth that Munster have in comparison to Leinster? And there was no question that Leinster have by far the bigger depth. So you wanted to see a performance like somebody such as Fineen Wycherley that you actually got the other day. Like, he's already got his iconic Munster moment.
He does.
His scrum cap was flung at him by the best player in the world. He's already reached iconic level.
And he also has the boyish face of like everybody else who comes through in that back row. Like, hang on a second, is that Jack? No, who's? Okay.
And his name sounds like J.K. Rowling came up with it or something. It's fantastic. He's got the whole package. He's that's what you want. He will be obviously a bench player when it comes to the big European games.
Is he more a second row? Is that where he's come from? Is that like? Cause
I would definitely have had him down as more of a second row until last week when he obviously had 6 on his back. So obviously a bit of a Tyg Byrne / Scott Fardy about him, can kind of do a bit of both.
Tyg Byrne didn't do himself any damage with that performance as well. Fineen Wycherley is 21 and 6'5". Like, it's these are the type of players that you kind of needed to see coming through at Munster and putting down 15, 20 games and gone, okay, now I'm like, everybody was going to start talking about me in that tradition. We just haven't seen enough of them recently. Because I think there was more South Africans and Leinster players on the team starting for Munster
than actual Munster men. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure you would have noticed.
Well, look, it's not a dig, right? It's like a statement of fact that they definitely need to improve the amount of players coming through. Anyway, we'll come back to that a little bit later on. We've got Andy Dunne with us in the studio around about 8:30 this morning. Munster not being able to easily beat teams down to 14 for a majority of the match should be a worry, though, says Welton man. 60 minutes with 14 men, 10 minutes with 13. A win is a win, but Munster are vastly overstating their performance and the importance of this fixture. Leinster played 20-year-old Frawley for 20 minutes. Subbing Frawley for Sexton 20 minutes out, still a chance to win, shows what Leinster's priority was. I saw somebody saying that was down to managing the minutes as opposed to the injury.
I saw someone say that as well. I'm not quite sure if that was the case. I would have said that if you're going to start Johnny Sexton, you probably got to know that he's going to play the full 80.
Yeah.
I would say that was the plan. I'm not quite sure what that was about.
It looked like there was a knock.
Yeah.
He comes on and puts an ice pack on.
But like
that's the David Beckham. David Beckham got subbed off one time by Ferguson, was like ostentatiously wrapping up his hamstring, and Ferguson was asked about it after. He was like, no, I took him off. Nothing wrong with his hamstring. But he was like, yeah, he's just having a pet in a little. I mean, I would be amazed if that was. I don't think that was what was going on.
I see Contepomi was asked in the press conference about Sexton's captaincy. Like, for me, looking at that performance, it's kind of like, even more captain material sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you kind of want to see that. Maybe it's not within the values of the game, that the kind of, I don't know, conversations he tends to have with the referee, but I found it particularly entertaining.
Yeah, like, there's no way that Sexton influenced the yellow cards that Furlong and Healy got. Like, there isn't. I don't think that had any impact. I don't think his captaincy, like that incident which had any impact on the yellow cards. Like, both are relatively unfortunate.
I wonder what he said to Joey Carberry when he was on the ground that time.
Yeah, that would be nice to know, wouldn't it?
That's the next thing we need to find out. It's like at one point that'll come out
in 10 years' time when they're like at a roadshow together.
Yeah, well, exactly. There you go. There's your brief done for that.
Okay, so let's tell you what's coming up on the show this morning. We're going to bring you to the sports pages 10 minutes ago. We'll talk football from about 10 past 8. So go and get the general mood music around Liverpool. Talk a bit more about Seamus Coleman as well, obviously. Andy Dunne joining us around about 8:40 this morning, and some more sports news from you from Darren around about 5 past 9. Things are a little bit slower at this time of year, just generally.
Yeah, I guess everybody's
still on holidays, really.
Like, dry January doesn't start until like the 7th of January.
Yeah. Why would you make your life?
It's an easy out. Exactly.
Let's run you through the newspapers this morning. If you're back at work this morning, by the way, yeah, fair play to you. You know, at least a good half of our office are like, oh, yeah, maybe I'll come in, maybe I won't.
Are you slapping yourself in the back there?
I mean, no, I just like, you know. Tottenham bounce back to coast past Cardiff after early goal blitz. Mark and Harry Kane would be a good idea, lads. Cardiff 0, Tottenham 3. And then afterwards, the Cardiff manager, Neil Warnock, was like, oh, it's not fair. The Spurs are going to play their games in their new stadium. There's going to be a betting-in period for them at the new White Hart Lane. We had to play them at Wembley. Everybody else had to play them at Wembley. The Premier League should make them play the games at Wembley for the rest of the season. I'm like, you are a dumbass. They're far more likely to win every game at White Hart Lane than they are at Wembley.
I'm not going to lie, until Neil Warnock said it, the thought had crossed my mind that there might be a small betting-in period at White Hart Lane. But then Neil Warnock said it, so I automatically kind of have to disagree with him, because I disagree with a lot of what he says, except for the fact that actually the one weird thing that's happened to me over the Christmas period is that I've started to warm to Neil Warnock. I've started to think to myself, the phrase that was used on this show was that Cardiff were going to get relegated extremely hard from the Premier League.
Extremely hard.
And it doesn't seem to be happening that way at all. And in fact, there's a high possibility they will avoid relegation. Now, if I'm calling it now, I do think they're going to finish 18th. Cardiff City. I just don't think they have the squad of players around them, or say a manager in the ilk of Rafa Benitez to keep them up. I do think they're still in huge trouble, but I didn't think they'd be in the survival mix as healthily as they are at the moment, and they're not going to finish bottom.
Yeah. I mean,
so respect has to go to Neil Warnock for what he's done.
Oh, look, he's got a successful career in football management into his old age. Arsenal got back on track against profligate and porous Fulham. Was it a good idea to change the manager as early as they did? Should they maybe have stuck a little bit? Are they going to have to do it again?
I don't know. Like, up until yesterday, it was their best run of form of the season. They'd gone 3 games unbeaten. There was a lot, as tends to happen at the Emirates Stadium, quite a lot at the moment, there was a huge sense of nervousness, particularly when Fulham got back to 2-1. They got a couple of chances then after that as well. It could have been a lot better for Ranieri yesterday. So, like, at the start, I thought you were bang on about him, that it was a terrible appointment. But over the Christmas period, they've started to show a few more signs of a team that might actually be up for the fight and put some sort of run together.
I could see him being gone by the end of January.
That would be extremely harsh. And also, the Fulham hierarchy know that it's their fault. And then suddenly the fans' hatred goes towards them instead of the management.
FAI to introduce term limits on board. This is a John Fallon story that's in many of the newspapers this morning. So the story here is the FAI are to stage an emergency general meeting next month to introduce term limits on their all-powerful board. Sorry, not on all their powerful boards. So before Christmas, it emerged that the Department of Sport, Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport, Shane Ross, mandated Sport Ireland to ensure that major bodies were compliant with the government code for community, voluntary and charitable organisations by 2019. So basically this is, you need to introduce term limits of 3 years for all your senior officers on the board, and you can only have 3 of those terms, so a 9-year limit. That would obviously have a major impact at the FAI, where Delaney has been a director since 2001. 4 others, Eddie Murray, Pádraig Traynor, Michael Cody and Jim McConnell are into their 15th year of directorship. So I wonder though, do you grandfather this in? Is it 9 years from now, or is it 9 years up to this point? So that bit wasn't clear from the way the story is written today, but I guess we'll get some more detail on that in the coming days. The FAI have issued a statement saying, on New Year's Eve, saying that they would complete their journey to compliance with the code by February 2019. So that's not that long for us now to wait. It isn't that, indeed, 2019 on. I can't confirm. This is January, February's next month.
So what happens? So when we qualify for Qatar 2022, Shane Ross is the man who saved Irish football.
I don't know.
Do we have to thank him for every good thing that now happens in Irish football?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're going to wait and see how that one plays out. Changing into a champion, Sunita Sport charts the twists and turns that put her on top of the world. And then Kieran Shannon has a piece about Don Wooden, the basketball coach who coined the phrase "the process," and
it's more to do with Nick Saban, that piece, and just how insanely. And she obviously Wooden came up with the idea of the process that Jim Gavin has taken and made his own. But I think what is it? Next Monday is the college football final.
Yeah,
and obviously to actually win one college title in the United States is insane, just because of the amount of teams involved. But I think they're going for their 6 and 8 years or something like that, Alabama, which is just an insane achievement. So it's a good piece by Kieran Shannon.
Apparently Nick Saban's a bit of an asshole though, screaming at the kids on the sideline.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I guess, do you have to be an asshole to be at his level?
I don't think so.
Like he does say that if there is a match set for kick-off time around television at, say, 2:39, Saban will be there for the television interview at 12:39, not 12:30, because 2 hours before kick-off is 2 hours before kick-off. Like, there is being punctual, and then there is being just a bit of an asshole. Maybe they're the same thing.
Yeah, maybe. On to the Irish Independent this morning. So it's about playing the right way, insists Solskjaer, who, it's just easy. Get out there, smack them all in their asses, tell them they're great, and away they go. United's interim manager pledges to keep positive approach as he closes in on Busby Mark. What is the chances of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer getting this gig now? What does he have to do? Does he have to win the Champions League?
No, you don't have to win the Champions League. You've got to. The thing is that he's not had to lay down a marker just yet. He's just had to do what is expected of Manchester United and pick up 3 points in the games that they're expected to pick up 3 points in. Like, if they take a scalp of PSG in the Champions League, then the conversation becomes a realistic one. I think at this point it is still too early to say Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the man for the job. It would be stupid of Manchester United to not make a move from Maurizio Pochettino. No matter what Solskjaer does between now and the end of the year, Maurizio Pochettino is still a better manager than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Like, Solskjaer would, as you say, have to win the Champions League to stave off that. Now, the thing is, Manchester United may well be unable to get Pochettino. They may well be unable to get someone like Zidane. And then they're looking lower down the rungs. And is Laurent Blanc on that level? He's probably on a rung below that. So then it becomes, say, a situation between Blanc and Solskjaer. Then what does Solskjaer need to do? And you would say...
Not much.
Not a whole pile more, because once you get beyond those first 2 targets, the managerial world of options is actually a lot thinner. Although they've been looking at your man Rose, the manager of Red Bull Salzburg as well, apparently. So they do a bit of recon and try and get someone like, say, Southampton tend to do, getting Pochettino in the first place, or Hasenhüttl now, and get a hipster's choice as manager. That could be the only thing that might stop Solskjaer.
I don't think Man United are going to go hipster.
No, they won't.
There's no chance. McIlroy plays down loyalty towards European tours. An interesting. So Brian Keogh has this piece here saying, I've travelled the world for 12 years playing professional golf. I'm still going to be a world player, but I don't want that hopping back and forth over the Atlantic as much as I used to do. It's not as if we all got handed starts. You've got to qualify to get on. A lot of guys have this sort of loyalty to the European Tour, which is great. Great for them. But my life's here. I live in the States and my wife is American. Everything is moving this way in the world. It just makes sense. I'm finally healthy. I'm feeling good. I've got the schedule I want and I'm settled in my life. And fair play. Ultimately, like, the European Tour can try and continue to compete, or it can kind of be like friendly towards these players who are superstars coming from Europe and say, come on, come back. You know, we understand this is a long game. You'll still play for us in the Ryder Cup, won't you? Won't you?
Like he must have been looking on with envy over the past couple of years as the likes of Spieth and Thomas and Dustin Johnson just managed to play on their one tour and really not have to, I guess, pay any sort of tribute to the European Tour by playing events that they don't want to play. And I'm not saying Rory McIlroy doesn't want to play the European Tour events he didn't want to play. I'm sure if it really came down to it and he felt it was badly affecting his career, he would have taken a step back from them already. But he's probably at the stage in his career now where he's like, right, this idea of me perhaps racking up a few more majors has got to happen in 2019 or 2020. I've got to do every little thing within my control to get that to happen, and stepping away from the European Tour. He's dead right.
Yeah, and it was like totally and utterly inevitable. The European Tour at some point is going to merge with the PGA Tour, really. That's like, maybe it already has in some respects. Coleman looked like McCarthy's first big call. It's Sean Fallon's talking point. Do you pick Seamus Coleman to play for Ireland? Well,
the difference is I'm not the manager, Mick McCarthy is the manager. Mick McCarthy's obviously a very good relationship with Matt Doherty as well. I'm sure that won't come into play, but you know, he certainly knows him a lot more than Martin O'Neill knew Matt Doherty. I think that's fair to say. So is that going to become a factor in his decision? It might do. Like, club form is obviously going to be a massive factor, which, needless to say, puts Matt Doherty well above Seamus Coleman in that role. The thing is, like, Seamus Coleman, we've seen him dropped as captain to the bench for Everton. Like, captain to the bench for the Republic of Ireland as well is now not such a far-fetched possibility. It's very, very tough to say. I think if he continues to not play for Everton, Matt Doherty probably leapfrogs him, doesn't he? If you're not playing for your club and there is a player playing week in, week out for the team that are just as good as Everton are at the moment in the Premier League, you've got to pick that player.
Yeah, but do you? Do you not also have to
like,
go?
Like the thing is here, like Coleman could come back into the Everton team and there might be some sort of, he might salvage something from the season yet.
Yeah.
I do think we're very quick to say this slump in form is the real kind of tail end of his career, or it's the beginning of the end of his career, and there is evidence to suggest it might be. But there have been cases where sometimes an injury like the one he sustained has just taken an extremely long time to come back from.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there's a very good chance James Coleman regains form, and I would not be dropping him from the Ireland team at any stage just now. I'd be trying to find a way to find a space for him and Matt Doherty. I see Cyrus Christie getting mentioned in that conversation as well. I mean, that's not right.
Well, he is a starting right back in the Premier League. You have to mention him.
Yeah, but like, is he as good as either of the other two?
You don't drop Seamus Coleman for Cyrus Christie at right back. No, you have to consider dropping him for Matt Doherty. You just have to. If you're going to play a flat back four and only one of Coleman or Matt Doherty can get into the team, it's ridiculous to not consider dropping Seamus Coleman, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
You have to consider Matt Doherty.
I mean, like, certainly there's a conversation to be had, but it's not ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's not ridiculous to have the view that your captain and best player for the last half a decade
is untouchable.
Is going to be the player that you're going to build around for the next two campaigns. And so Matt Doherty's form needs to be way better. Like, it needs to be astonishingly. It needs to be, okay, I'm going to completely change the fabric of my team. I'm going to look for new leaders in my team. I'm going to look for I'm going to look for that person who will come out and defend what we're doing and do the job that Seamus Coleman has done for Ireland under very difficult circumstances over the last year and a half.
And you can't overstate that enough.
It's not just a like-for-like replacement then, because maybe we overstate the value of that, but at the same time, you just think in the dressing room, people are looking around to Seamus Coleman and going, well, he's done it for a long time and he's put it in, and he hasn't been blabbing away the way Matt Doherty has. Like, you know, that counts for stuff, right?
Yeah, he's reacted with, or he's behaved himself with great integrity, and he's been a model professional all throughout his career. Like, there's no question about that. And I'm not saying it's an automatic decision here. I'm just saying that, can Mick McCarthy afford to go into the next campaign and say, oh no, Seamus Coleman is untouchable? Of course he can't. He's just got dropped for his club, and the player who would step into his shoes is playing with one of the most promising teams in the Premier League and has had a pretty bloody promising season himself. He's picked up a Player of the Month award. Like, it definitely has to be a debate that the Irish managerial team are having. Now, the debate, if you're talking about building a team around a player, well then the option of 3 at the back with wing backs obviously becomes a realistic potential in terms of getting them both in there. And I know it's been touted before, and like I don't know how well that's actually going to work from an Irish perspective. Like how good really is Matt Doherty or Seamus Coleman going to be on the right of a back 3? That certainly is a huge question mark about the whole thing.
Yeah, it's worth trying though, right? At some point.
Definitely, and it helps that Gibraltar's first up.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to see them in a good, I don't know, obviously every game is a qualifier until the friendlies, but sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and go for it.
Sometimes. I've got the tabloids here. The back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is Harry New Year. Now Kane scored against all 28 Premier League teams he's faced. That was the statistic doing the rounds yesterday. The only player to do so, to have a 100% strike rate. Not if you include like players who've kind of only played once against players, or once against teams, I should say. Leinster now on everyone's target as well, warns Sean Cronin. Back page of the Herald is Pogba sights on Ron record. United Ace now looking to make a third time lucky, while Spurs back in the title hunt. Harry Kane pictured there as well, celebrating his goal yesterday afternoon. Back page of the Sun this morning is Scouse of cards, Pep confident of Cop tumble, while Inter plot to snap up Young. So Inter Milan are prepared to launch a bid to sign Ashley Young, which is an interesting story doing the rounds this morning. Transfer rumours in full flow as the January transfer market opened 48 hours ago, 24 hours ago at this point. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is Gappy New Year. Liverpool's lead not a burden for Klopp. You've also got Green Giants treble yell. King of the World Michael van Gerwen winning his third PDC World Arts Championship last night. Did you watch it?
No.
Why? You didn't want to watch an artist at work?
Life is too short for me to make room for darts in it right now.
I would say there's not enough room in life for darts. Well,
how was it, Eoin?
It was not as enjoyable as some people were predicting it to be. I'm not going to lie, I didn't follow this year's World Darts Championship as much as I've previously done.
I know.
Because
shit. Go on. Why not?
Because it's actually too good for me.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And Wayne Mardle was saying beforehand, this could be one of the greatest finals of all time. So naturally I started to get excited. And unfortunately...
So the hype sucked you in?
No, I was going to watch it all anyway. Just to see if plucky underdog Michael Smith...
Then you watched it and it turned out it was crap.
No, Michael Smith bottled a lot of finishes. He was keeping pace with him really on the big numbers for the first couple of sets, and it was just his finishing was atrocious. He just crumbled under the pressure. He said he actually, when he went backstage between one of the sets, he punched a wall and he think he broke his hand. Which, like, to be honest with you, if you're a darts player, breaking your hand in the middle of a game isn't exactly a good idea. Now, I don't think it was his throwing hand. He didn't specify, but that was things were only going to get bad to worse for him when he punched a wall, I think. But Michael van Gerwen, he's a machine. I was just rereading that interview that Dominic did with him in 2014, and he refers to him as Uncle Fester, and it's just constant Frankenstein or Adam's Family after Adam's Family sort of pun throughout the article, which is some people could say mean-spirited, but you would probably say it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
The Green Giant. Back page of the Mirror is anxious and nervous. Silva admits Everton are feeling the pressure after worst home run since Martinez was sacked. And the back page of the Guardian is Reds put on alert. Silva insists City will attack Liverpool in title showdown.
They're not talking about getting rid of Marco Silva, are they? At Everton?
Yes, anxious and nervous, sorry. Silva admits Everton are feeling the pressure after worst home run since Martinez was sacked, as I said was the headline there. So, well, like this is the thing that's been doing the rounds over the last couple of days. So Everton's form, to say it's patchy would be doing them a huge service, I think, at this point. Like, at what point do you have to look at Marco Silva and say, your head's on the chopping block here?
Well,
because
I was thinking about this, right? So, like, what is Everton want to be a top 6 club, right? They want to be a team who, on their very best year, can somehow squeak in to a Champions League place and build that way. Is it possible they can do that by having chop manager, or do they actually need a little bit of stability at the club and say, okay, you're going to be here 3 years at least, and this is our strategy, and this is our transfer strategy, and we're going to buy players according to this. We're going to try and get as many through as we possibly can from the academy, because we've traditionally been able to do that. And this is your salary restrictions, and this is the amount of players you can sign. Can you do that by chopping the manager? Like, who has done that successfully? Chelsea, obviously, but with the investment of $1 billion, which Everton clearly aren't going to make. So there's no other way of doing this, surely, without keeping him or somebody deciding who is your person and then sticking with him.
All valid points. Like, I think Everton's head might be turned by what's going on around them in the Premier League. They look at clubs like Wolves and Watford, sort of nouveau riche almost of the mid to lower rungs of the Premier League table. And you don't want to say there's like a chop nature to that, certainly not with Wolves, because they came with a plan to conquer the Championship and they did it successfully, and they came with a plan to survive in the Premier League and they've done that very, very successfully. There is just sort of a different approach to the way Everton do things, and you do wonder if the way that they feel to keep or to not stay static is to just change manager quite regularly when things don't go well. Because I think you always get to a stage every single year with Everton where you're like, if they could only just replicate this on a more consistent basis, which is surely going to happen from next August onwards, and it just never does. It never materialises in that way. And I think the Christmas period has just epitomised Everton over the past couple of years. Like a couple of dreadful results, one very, very good result. And that's been it. And it's like the situation with Seamus Coleman now, you'd wonder how the fans are going to react to that.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about Coleman a bit now. Let's play you this first. It's Mark Lawrence on Seamus Coleman's struggle to get back to his best after his spell on the sidelines.
Yeah, quite possibly. But it comes to everybody in the end. It was a horrific injury, as everybody knows, and he got himself back. And he looked good. In fairness, today to Everton, John Joe Kenny, the local boy, has been playing it right back, and actually he's been one of the better players. But it's just for Seamus, it's father time, I'm afraid. So he's just basically got to get on with it. But it's obviously really, really difficult when you've been such a good player. When you think about him and Baines on the other side, I mean, they were absolute. Was there a better pair of fullbacks in the time? I'm not sure that there was.
Yeah, well, I mean, Coleman was always regarded as one of the best in the Premier League and constantly linked with a move to a bigger club. Never happened for him. And now I wonder, does he regret that he didn't go maybe when he had the chance?
I don't think so, because I think if he'd really wanted to go and put his foot down, you know what football's like nowadays. If you kind of say, I want to go, it's very, very difficult for anybody or any team to keep you. I think he knew what he had at Everton. And in many, many ways, we talked about the fullback partnership. You'd argue they were possibly the two best players week in, week out. And everybody looked at him. I mean, obviously, David Moyes signed him, didn't he? And I think he says he's probably the best buy he'd ever made. So, and he's been a great servant, obviously, for ourselves as well. But you got to get on with it. It's life, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's Mark Lawrence in conversation with Phil on Premier League Live at the weekend. Dominic King of the Daily Mail is on the line. Dominic, obviously we've been talking a bit about Everton there, and we'll talk to you about Liverpool in a moment. But just your thoughts first on Seamus Coleman. 10 years yesterday to the day that that bargain signing was made, so Everton have definitely got their money's worth. Are we entering the end of days for Seamus Coleman at Everton as a starter, or is there a second act to come here?
I wouldn't like to be the one to say he's finished. I've seen Seamus develop over the last 10 years, and I've just been listening to what Mark's been saying, and he had it absolutely spot on. I think Everton had the best two fullbacks paired in the country for a spell. That injury that he received was absolutely horrific, and what he did to get back. And the form that he showed when he came back at this time last year was absolutely magnificent. Now he's hit a spell recently where it's not been so good, where he's struggled he looked like his confidence is being hit, and I think there's been sections where of the crowd getting on his back. But what is he? He's not 30 yet. I think he's still.
I think he's just 30.
He's 29. I think I think there was going to be a point after coming back from a long-term injury where he was going to have a blip, and I hope he gets through it, because he's a great lad. He loves Everton. They've made his life for him, if you will. He came from Sligo, Killybegs, and it's a proper old-fashioned story, isn't it? You don't hear of those transfers anymore, where for a nominal amount of money someone comes and then becomes a household name, and he's been absolutely fantastic for Everton. What a servant! I just hope this is a different form and not something more progressive.
Yeah.
Just a quick one on that, Dom. Sorry. At the weekend, Everton, they played a back three with wing backs and a back five, if you like, and Coleman was obviously distributed as a right wing back. Do you think that was a method specifically by Silva to get the best out of Coleman as a last-ditch attempt in this current lull of form to try and make sure he stays in the starting team? And then when perhaps it didn't go so well for him at the weekend, I think it was Saturday they played, then obviously he got dropped for yesterday.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's a difficult question to answer that because it's been a bit mix and match at the minute with Everton. At the minute, you don't really know what Marco Silva's going to do from one game to the next. And they're a team in a sort of I'm not going to say like a sort of spiral of lacking confidence, but the last month has been dreadful. The performances haven't been good, and He's looking for ideas to try and make things happen a bit better for them. They were awful yesterday. They didn't deserve anything from the match. And I don't know whether they've had 4 games in 10 days, and maybe Seamus was feeling the effects of that. I think all will become apparent when they play Bournemouth in the next Premier League game. I think he'll make changes against Lincoln in the FA Cup on Saturday, but until we see them again in the Premier League, I don't know what we could say, whether he's going to revert to a back four, whether 3 at the back is going to be the way to go, because he's taken Yerry Mina in and out, so there's nothing settled at the minute, and that's what he really needs to do.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we were just chatting before we started this piece about what the strategy long term for a club like Everton should really be, and whether or not this is the right manager to take the club forward. And I'm making the case that at some point Everton need to decide somebody is the right guy, and they're going to give them the opportunity to work this stuff out, to kind of learn a little bit on the job, in the hope that they develop into a Pochettino or somebody at that level. From the sounds of what you're saying, I'm not sure that maybe they've got the right man at the moment. Or I guess the wider question is, are the club inclined to look for somebody at the moment?
Oh no, I wouldn't think to be looking for anyone at the minute. They went through they went through a big process to get Marco Silva, and they're obviously still in wrangling with Watford at the minute over compensation and whatnot for how he left, and what the charge that Watford levelled against him. Everton couldn't keep Farhad Moshiri, the major shareholder. He couldn't start sort of acting on a whim, and as soon as things go wrong, make a decision to get rid of someone, because he's already spent 35 million in severance fees since he's been at the club, and that's the road to the poorhouse. They could not carry that on. It was only 5 weeks ago we were writing pieces about how things were looking up for them, how they'd been on a good run, and they'd drawn at Chelsea, and the form was getting better and better. And listen, they're having a bad point, and they have to address it. It would be ridiculous to sort of start making knee-jerk assessments. And I've seen some of it on Twitter last night from the supporters saying, "Oh, he's not the man. He's not the man." Well, he's had 6 months, and there's still a lot of players that need to be changed and a lot of things that need to be addressed. So, this season, he should be given this season to show what that he can, that his plans can be built in the long term. Definitely. Yeah,
no, I would agree with that. Let's move on and talk about Liverpool, because they find themselves in this remarkable situation where they've got a massive lead at the top of the Premier League table. When we all assumed that there was going to be a title race this year, it would be them trying to stalk Manchester City. But Man City's wobble has happened, and Liverpool have been able to exert the full advantage from that wobble. What's going right for Liverpool at the moment?
Well, everything really. Full of confidence. Every player that he's playing is in form. They've had no injuries. Touch wood to the real core players. Of a Salah, Van Dijk, Alisson, those type. The tweak that he made to his team to play 4-2-3-1 rather than 4-3-3 has paid dividends, because they look sharper and the more of a threat in the area, and everything is going really well. And they've come through. Whereas I was just talking about how bad December's been for Everton, for Liverpool, it's been the stuff of dreams, because they've won every game, through to the Champions League last 16, and the lead they've got in the title races is very, very encouraging indeed.
Yeah, the formation change has been fascinating, really, going from the 4-2-3 to the 4-2-3-1. And Roberto Firmino, prior to the Arsenal game, people were saying things like, well, Roberto Firmino's form is off, but you could kind of accept that, and the fact that his a sort of different position allowed perhaps Mo Salah's form to take a huge upturn. And then suddenly Roberto Firmino goes out and scores a hat-trick. So literally everything is going right for Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, well, it's interesting on Firmino. I was looking at his figures from last season after this many games compared to this, and there's a very sort of tiny discrepancy in terms of goals and assists and whatever. I mean, people had said that he's been out of form and maybe not having the influence in games and that he should have been. But if you look at his numbers in terms of how much he's running, how much he's on the ball, how many chances he's creating for his teammates, it all stacks up to last season when we were saying that he was one of the best in Europe. If he's starting to click now, and he's starting to have an influence in this position, then that really is a sign that Liverpool are going to be potent, because he's fabulous. I think he goes under the radar. I mean, this might sound a daft thing to say, but I think he's probably one of the most underrated world-class players in the game at the minute. He doesn't get the headlines that he should have because of Salah and Van Dijk and Alisson and one thing and another. But he was immense on Saturday, and he looked from the first minute. You could see that he was ready to go. And if he's going to build into a run of form, then Liverpool are going to score a lot more goals.
We were kind of speaking off air. I was kind of musing as to what are the odds on Fernandinho to win Player of the Year, because by his absence he's been talked up to this status of being perhaps Manchester City's most important player. And there may be an element of truth in that. Certainly you take him out of the team, Manchester City's results dip. Do you think there's a player in the Liverpool team that if they got injured or they were absent, similar to Fernandinho, where they have a good player to replace him, but that player, like Ilkay Gundogan, can't fulfil that position quite well, and the results would subsequently dip?
I wouldn't want to tempt fate, but I would say Van Dijk. Van Dijk's had an extraordinary the first half of the season. I've not seen a Liverpool central defender play like this for 30 years. Going back to the days of Mark Lawrence and then Alan Hansen. He's absolutely magnificent. He did something in the game against Wolves on the Friday before Christmas, where he sort of gave Adama Traore a start and sort of sauntered alongside him and took the ball away. That was just absolutely magnificent defending at its best. He's such a calming presence. He's got. You can see the way he plays. He makes everything happen at his own pace. The team have got such confidence in him as well, and if anything was to happen to him, I would think that there would be. You would see an impact on the form, but Jurgen Klopp and everybody will be keeping the fingers crossed that he's there right until the bitter end.
We were wondering if the squad was big enough to compete in both the Champions League and the Premier League. I mean, all those fears have been allayed somewhat over the last few weeks. But, as the season progresses, if they continue to have the lead they have in the Premier League at the moment, I mean, that question kind of looks after itself. It's like, well, we can, because we have a lead in the Premier League. Yeah,
and that's it's important to stress that point. I think it is only a lead at the minute. There's an awful long way to go, and I think people need to remember as well about there's obviously huge excitement about this, because it's a long time since Liverpool have been in a position where they've had as good a chance of this as winning the league. But Manchester City, when they first won the title in 2012, they came back from 8 points behind with 8 games to go. So there's a hell of a lot of work to be done. But in terms of the second half of the season, I really can't see the Champions League being too detrimental, because if it's to go all the way to the final, it's only another 7 games, which is effectively only the group stage, and that's spaced out over 4 months rather than 2 and a bit. So it shouldn't. And they've played the bulk of the Premier League games now as well. So I wouldn't have thought tiredness or fatigue or anything like that should come into it, because Klopp's managed the squads quite skillfully, and he's got lots of options now that will give him will give him the ability to freshen the team up and not impact on or dilute the quality that he's bringing in. So they will be able to attack both prizes, I think, and I wouldn't like to hear them start talking about fixture fatigue, because I think they've got through the hardest part in terms of scheduling. I really do.
Yeah, it like when you look at City and you look at the Guardiola teams over the years, they tended to be brilliant front runners, but when in league campaigns in particular, when other teams got at them, stayed with them, and got a bit of a lead, then they got easily distracted in the past. Certainly his Barcelona team didn't win the league every year. Mourinho managed to turn them over, despite the fact that they were clearly the superior force at the time. There's just a sense that sometimes that his teams are preoccupied with things other than just winning the game. And I don't know, this season has the bang of that actually this might not be a 2-horse race. If Liverpool beat City and open up that lead, like, it might just be Liverpool's to lose for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it will. 10 points would be massive. 10 points really would be massive, because that would mean Liverpool having to lose 4 games and City winning everything. And I couldn't see that happening. I think Liverpool have only lost 3 since October 2017. So I can't see them losing 4 in 4 months. I might be wrong, but let's see. But no, you're right about Guardiola. He either wins the league by a street. I was going through his records with Barcelona and Bayern Munich, and the winning margins were either 9, 10 or 19 points. They were all massive wins. The only one that was a bit different was I think it was 2011. Barcelona won by 3 points. And that was the only time he's really been in a fight and come out on top. But he's going to be in a fight now. Make no mistake about it. And if Liverpool were to go to the Etihad and win, and let's again stress this, that's no cut and dried thing, because City are going to throw absolutely everything at them and more. But if they were to go there and win, then they couldn't wish to be in a better position.
Dominic, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
And a Happy New Year to you. See you soon.
Dominic King there from the Daily Mail, obviously on the Merseyside beat, covering Everton and Liverpool.
The thing is, Liverpool could easily lose this title, and people are like, they bottled it again, and they might well not bottle it. It is highly dependent on the Manchester City resurgence, which you suspect is coming immediately. It was that blip that they had, and it was down to the absence of Fernandinho. It was down to other factors as well. First of all, getting pretty unlucky. Second of all, I also want to make the point that it's kind of bizarre to say this given the talent they have in that department, but a number 9 in the guise of someone like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was just absent. Someone to just be in the right place at the right time, like Pique Aguero, and eke out a result like that. But perhaps that's not what Guardiola wants. He was, I wouldn't say he was grilled in the press conference after Leicester, but he was certainly questioned numerous times about his philosophy and if he would be willing to change it given the current predicament. And he was like, absolutely not. There's no question. There's no way we're ever changing this.
Yeah, he's right to. He's right not to.
He's totally right in general.
Whether or not the team is flaky, is there a flakiness in that team at the moment? Where does that come from? Because there seems to be a little bit. You're saying it's down to bad luck, and is the 34-year-old central midfielder really the only thing that's holding this together? Is that the little bit of sticky tape that keeps...
Well, I couldn't agree more that whole thing has been overblown. It was a large factor, and he has been brilliant this season. He was particularly good, I thought, against Manchester United a few weeks back. It's I don't know. There's more factors than that for sure. And maybe if you were going to tell me that there was going to be one team that was going to crumble during the Christmas period with the build-up of games, I wouldn't have said it was going to be Manchester City.
We did talk about the flakiness before Christmas. We should come back and dig that out. Right, we're going to talk rugby now, and we'll come back to the football in a couple of minutes' time. If you have any comments for us, though, you can just use the hashtag OTBAM on Twitter, and we'll pick that up automatically, or you can leave a comment under the stream. We stream this live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter as well. Andy Dunne's going to join us in studio right now, but here's what Johnny Sexton and Leo Cullen had to say after that tetchy Munster-Leinster clash. Have a look.
Clips of the game, but there's two incidents with yourself and Joey Carberry during the game. One was probably a little bit of after as you threw him to the ground, probably no issue there, but there's another one we were in a ruck and it looked like you just kind of, maybe there was a bit of a knee as you were getting up and Carberry kind of reacted to it. That's kind of getting shared a lot at the moment. Can you remember that at all, or the incident at the time?
No.
The other one that was just kind of, as you said, there was this one at the sideline where I think Connor and James Klein got involved as well, but or Jean Klein, but you threw him to the ground as well like that. Is that just kind of something that happens in a game, nothing to make a big deal out of, or can you remember if anything was said at the time?
Yeah, nothing said, no. It's just something that happens in rugby matches.
And then the last one for me, and this one is just you came off, Frawley came on for you and you kind of pointed to yourself, like maybe you wanted to stay out there on the pitch, but then there was ice on your calf afterwards. Was it more of a kind of an injury that you came off for to kind of rest up?
I pointed to myself.
Yeah, just like I might have got coming off when Kieran came on, yeah.
No, it was always the plan.
It was more of an injury, like I saw like there was ice on Johnny's calf then afterwards. So pointed at yourself like I might have got to come off.
No, we wanted to get here the exposure like him, and that's why we made that change in 60 minutes. Yeah, it's a stirring question.
That's just what I saw.
Right, that was interesting. So it was pre-planned. Andy, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So it was pre-planned for him to come off, and the ice in the calf was just incidental. Yeah.
Seems so.
There you go.
It was surprising because he was actually beginning to find a little bit of form in the game itself. I think apart from the first 2 to 3 minutes where Leinster were excellent, they then became disjointed primarily, I think, because they lost their discipline and because Johnny had a go at Fineen Wycherley on that very borderline late tackle. But they didn't really find any flow in the game until about 3 to 4 minutes before Johnny was subbed off. So it was, I suppose, whether it was pre-planned or not, given the scoreline, it was surprising.
Yeah, there's no room for wiggle when you're chasing the game. You're like, actually, we want to win this game. We have our pre-plan. We've got to take them off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I was surprised. I mean, wiggle would be the word I'd use. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I would have wiggled it. I would have. I certainly would have looked at the way the game had panned out and developed. But then again, if you've got, who knows, if you've got maybe the Irish camp in one ear as well, I don't know the details. I don't know whether Leinster are planning on Johnny obviously getting 2 full 80 minutes in the 2 European games, and they've probably a set amount of minutes that they ought to give him or want to give him in Pro 14 matches. But I would have wiggled.
Yeah. Let's talk about Munster's performance first. They really needed this because the questions that they were asked in the aftermath of the Cash game was, would the team from a decade ago have allowed themselves to be bullied and gouged and kicked and not had a response physically in the match? And I mean, the answer apparently is no, we can do that too. We're able to stand toe to toe with anybody.
Yeah, they. I think any aggression that they showed in the Leinster game was responsive to Leinster. Leinster were the architects of their own downfall in my mind, in terms of just being slightly over-egged, slightly overly aggressive. I think they were keen to go down to Thomond and I suppose give the impression they're not being bullied, but I think they over-egged it, and as a result I think Munster's aggression came to the fore, but I think it had to be dragged out of them a little bit in that first 5 minutes or so.
Were you surprised that the game took on as much heat as it did?
I was surprised. Yeah, I thought Leinster lost their discipline. I thought they lost their usual sense of control, and they weren't. As I mentioned previously, the first 2 to 3 minutes, they had a kind of a seamless introduction to the game in terms of how they normally play, and were very much in control. And then Johnny's incident with Fineen Wycherley seemed to spark a response from his own team. He is the captain and he's the leader, and he is aggressive by nature, and generally that's a positive thing. But I think potentially some of the players, even the senior players like Fardy, making a really naive high tackle when the player was almost already in touch. That type of stuff really doesn't strike me as a team that were thinking clearly at that stage. So whether they were as a group dynamic, they were over-egged going into the game, perhaps too much in the changing room, perhaps too much chat over Christmas. I can only speculate, but for sure, looking at their typical style of play versus how they played in that first 40 minutes against Munster and Thomond, it was out of character for that Leinster side.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if you expected any team to perhaps go up to that level, you might have expected Munster, given what happens to them in Castres as well, that there would have been some sort of response. It's a very uncurrent Leinster thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, out of character, by that I mean the lack of discipline, and typically Leinster would be happy to concede or aiming to concede less than 10 penalties in an 80-minute game, and they conceded 10 in the first 37 minutes. Largely all very fair penalties, fair calls. The only thing, Frank Murphy, he was under the spotlight. I thought he did really well in that first 40 minutes. The only thing he arguably missed was Conor Murray's high tackle getting away, not being a yellow, having already carded Healy for a yellow card for a high tackle. So just a lack of consistency there. But given the pressure that was on Frank as a guy who played for Munster and had played with and against a number of the players on the field, I actually thought he did really, really well.
I like the way he explained the decisions, especially in the conversations with the TMO. I don't think we hear that enough, as if, like, this is the reason why I'm asking you this particular question, which I don't think we get enough, particularly when it comes to Heineken Champions Cup officiating.
Yeah, he was very communicative with his assistant referee and with Simon Wilkinson, the TMO. And I thought it gave good clarity. There were one or two decisions. Again, we probably go as far back as the November internationals. You're looking at like Farrell's high tackle and not being penalised in November, and it sparked a controversial debate again. But as a general direction in terms of how the game is being refereed and changes in the approach to high tackles and no arm tackles, I think the message is still being delivered fairly consistently. There were yellow cards, there was a red card for James Lowe's tackle. There was a debate on whether Furlong's tackle or no arms clear out at the ruck could have been red because shoulder made contact with the head. But I think I think Murphy used common sense. It's probably better than that he used smart sense. It wasn't just common sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
is Lowe's definitely red?
Yeah, I think it was. I think the way you can probably try and defend Lowe is that he's running at full pace, but it's not really good enough defence because the responsibility is on Lowe to run at full pace but protect the guy who's in the air. And he knows that going into the game. It's been fairly clearly outlined as well. So if he uses running full pace as an excuse, it's not good enough. He's got to know that. The heat of the battle, it got to his head, obviously, like a number of the other Leinster players.
Yeah, and Furlong's definitely yellow. And
I think Furlong's was definitely a yellow. By the letter of the law, you could argue it was a red because shoulder contact to the face should. But I think in this instance with Furlong, he was looking to clear out a ruck at reasonable pace. There was a Munster player behind his own Leinster player, and at the very last second, the Leinster player moved out of the way. At which point he couldn't react. But I don't think he targeted anyone's face from a distance with his shoulder. He was looking to hit that ruck, made contact with the face. And I think both Stander, Sexton and Furlong, when that was explained to them very clearly by Murphy, were all accepting of the decision and happy with it.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the quality of the performance from Munster, like, how much of this is something that you can build on? We saw patterns emerge, we saw them playing to a specific game plan, they'll be happy with stuff, or is that there was a fight and they won the fight? No,
I think Munster were constructive. I think their line speed and defence was a plus for them under pressure in a tight game against the European and domestic champions. They were able to show that they have a very strong and aggressive line of defence, and that's important under pressure. I think they were constructive in attack. They had the only line break of the first half off first phase play, a lovely backline play off a line out.
Was it a bit accidental?
Potentially accidental.
Was it a bit? It looked like it was supposed to go to Carberry and ends up onto Earls.
I think Carberry let it slide across his body and Earls ran through.
I mean, there might be like, I'm looking at the video of that going, can we do that again?
Yeah.
Can we try that again sometime?
And I think Earls probably could have linked up with the men outside him as well. He cut back inside. I do think they may look again, in terms of what they can build on there, very regularly in the heat of battle in European competition, you're going to be playing against a team with 14 or 13 men, probably less so against 13, but at 13 men, they had a scrum in midfield and chose to kick to the corner. When Leinster would have had a back rower gone and James Lowe off the field, and a midfield scrum, you're probably looking at attacking on either side, 2 defenders either side. You could stack what you like in terms of attack. I think that was an opportunity missed. However, they did get 6 points in that 10-minute period. So, you're probably splitting hairs to say they could have gone to the corner and got 7 points. They got 6.
The benefit of that would be, though, then that you have another front row on the field again. So, it's exponential.
Yes. And again, probably an average coming out of the last 2 seasons was teams tend to score 10 points in a sin bin period.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So 6 is fine, but ideally they could have scored more. Yeah. And they had a gilt-edged opportunity. They actually had 2 scrum opportunities that they didn't take. Against that 13-man Leinster set.
They'd have had Michael Bent on the field for another 6 or 7 minutes to attack as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah. So is that just game management, or is that... Yeah.
I think it absolutely is game management, and I think O'Mahony not being on the field, Carberry, that's where Carberry needs to really identify that, or Conor Murray, and they really need to kind of step on the Leinster throat at that stage. I think in the second half, again, in terms of what Munster can build on, they were constructive again, but they played a lot of rugby just working forwards, kind of one-out runners off Conor Murray. And again, against 14 men as the game and the Leinster team, the game develops and Leinster tire. That's a time, I think, for Joey to step in as a first receiver more regularly and try and get the ball into midfield. And when you get that breaks the game up, it breaks up Leinster's defence, and with a man down, you've a better chance to turn the screw.
He's a proper Munster player now. You can see from the delight when the first try goes in, it's like, I play for Munster now, lads.
Well, and rightly so. He's got to. You've got to buy into the ethos. You've got to buy into the spirit of the camp that you're in and the direction you're trying to go. And he's dead right. He's got to be aggressive and go seek out opportunities with Munster like he's done. And I think he's doing it reasonably well. I was delighted to see him place kick very well in that Leinster game, particularly on the back of the Castor game. He was striking the ball very well in Castor, but striking it wide, and nobody cares about that. But on a consistent basis, I think he's striking the placed ball better than he was, and if you keep doing that, generally you get rewarded. And in that pressure situation against Leinster, it was nice to see he converted.
Because let's face it, that was the first proper time when Joey Carberry had some proper questions about him, was after that Castor game. And of course they were all knee-jerk questions, especially look at the conditions as well that evening. And he's sort of past this setback. First of all, there's going to be more setbacks, but he seems like the type of guy who, when he gets a setback, he's going to be able to deal with it in a fairly mature way.
Yeah, he needs to be fairly unflappable in that regard as a 10 and an international 10, and Johnny's immediate understudy. He's got to show a resolve to that type of criticism, and if that Castor game is the worst criticism he ever gets as a 10, he's going to have a pretty successful career.
So as understudy getting flung to the ground, is that dynamic going to be affected?
I think as Johnny being asked about that, I think that's fine, to be honest. He dragged that was off the field. There was a bit of a skirmish, and Johnny dragged him out and tried to get him out of the argument, I suppose, and a bit of a power struggle there.
Should we be happy that they're not going to see each other again before the World Cup, Munster and Leinster? Well, unless there's some sort of Champions Cup miracle draw, really.
No, I want to see that again now, right?
So do I, but really just for the sake of, we've put all our eggs in the basket of the World Cup next year at this point. You said the rivalry was dead, but with all the transfers happening between them.
Well, it's well and truly alive, the rivalry. I think it was great that both sides, it's fully stacked for the first time in a couple of seasons, probably in a domestic fixture.
Sexton's first game in Thomond Park in 5 years.
6.5 years, and obviously he's going down there as captain as well for the first time, so he was clearly highly motivated going into that. But I actually think it's a pity. I think it would do the players good to get another game against each other at that, I suppose, at that intensity. But doesn't, like you said, unless there's a quirk of the kind of European draw.
Well, are Munster back? Is this one performance enough for us to go, okay, they're absolutely, totally and utterly back, and the worries that we had from on the back of the Castor game, that wasn't the truth. The truth is now.
No, I would say that's I think that's overly simplistic. I mean, I suppose back to what is, if they are back, what are they back to? If you're talking about the teams of old that, again, it was dragged up in post-Castra game, would they have lost those matches? Would they have found a way? And I think, to be honest, I think the older Munster team would have found a way to win in Castra. So is this team back to being like that? No, because I don't think they're going to be like that team. I think they need to be given space to be a different side. I think they have a little bit of identity crisis at the moment, I think, down there. I think they're a good side, they're very competitive, but they need to establish a clear style of play that works for the group that's currently there, and I think they're finding their way through that. And in terms of their mental toughness and the resolve, I think that's building, and the Leinster game will be of huge benefit.
I think so they'd Scannell and Goggin at 12 and 13, and so maybe Scannell is now a first choice starter when everybody is fit. I'm not quite sure just yet, but I think that if you add Chris Farrell to the team, it changes things
hugely.
And I think it was also interesting to have Tyler Blendell on the bench because now they've depth. If Blendell is back to fit, and fingers crossed that he is, I
think Chris Farrell will make quite a difference to, certainly to the Munster squad. I actually think Farrell is going to come through and make a difference for the Irish squad come Six Nations potentially, and certainly by World Cup time. I think Farrell's gone under the radar recently because of the injury, but I think he's a superb player, and it was notable Munster ran a ball from left to right off a scrum, and I think Goggin passed it straight into touch off his left hand, and I suppose in a very simple way. I know that Goggin is better than that as a player, but it's the type of thing that Farrell does with his eyes closed, in his sleep. He attracts defenders simply by his size and by his aggressive running lines, but to be able to make passes on the run like that as a distributor adds a dimension to Munster's game that they haven't had for a while. I think if you add in the likes of Carberry, Murray at 9, Carberry 10, Scannell as a very footballing type 12 with a nice left boot and a game management type of 12 that he is, and a guy like Farrell outside, I'd argue that's probably their best combination. With the likes of Blendell and Hanrahan, who again has blown hot and cold, but when he's hot, he's hot. They are developing depth. I think 9 probably. Mathieson coming in there has been a help, but they're potentially a bit slim in certain areas relative to Leinster, for example.
Yeah.
On that identity crisis that Munster may be going through, a lot of that probably has to be down to, I guess, a turbulent last 15 months down there as well, with the change of the coach, with other instances as well. I felt like they were trying to get rid of water from the boat at certain stages. Is that part of it? Is it down to what you talked about there, that when they get the right players in the right positions, they just have a team that makes sense, and it really is just down to personality?
Or is it down to the coach? What is the coach's desire for the team to have the identity?
Yeah, well, I tend to lean towards the coach down in Munster needs to really shape how they're going to play, and in an ideal setting, the coach does that by getting the best out of the personnel he has. So it ought to change from squad to squad how you're going to play. I mean, for a coach to come in with the same script and 30 different players to who he coached 5 years ago doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think there's a small cultural shift going on, in the sense that the traditional metrics for success then in Munster Rugby were a very strong forward pack and probably a tactically gifted 10 like O'Gara, who played largely a good kicking game and a territorial game, and that isn't Joey Carberry's strength, and they sought out Joey Carberry. So if they want to bring in Joey and try and put a square peg in a round hole and make him like Raj was, they're going to have trouble, because it's not his strength. If they're going to bring him in and be critical that they don't have an 8 to 10 man game like they used to have, it's a bit incongruous. Why would they go and seek out a guy like Carberry if they wanted? They could have gone and got a guy like Ross Byrne, for example, who'd have probably done that better.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that was in their thought process when they went and got him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they've got to allow for that, and they've got to allow for the skills he'll bring, which are undoubted. And I think they have an opportunity to be a bit more courageous than they've been in the past in terms of how they play the game. It's not being foolhardy, and there are going to be games like they had in Castra where it's rainy, wet and wintry, and putting the ball on the floor and in behind back 3 players is just you know, that's a home truth you can't get away from. You've got to do that in certain European games. But as a general style, I think they have an opportunity with the personnel they have. Certainly if you look at their back row, strength and depth, they're 9, 10, 12, 13 first choices, and the likes of Earls out wide, and Haley now, who looks to be really strong. They have an opportunity to develop their game into a bit more of an expansive game as a first port of call for them. But it remains to be seen will they be afforded time to do that.
Connacht played really well in the game against Leinster and just came up a little bit short, and then played really well in the game after that and didn't come up short. It looks like there's the bones of a team who you could see being a proper Heineken Cup team over the next couple of years there.
Yeah, and I think, isn't it the first three in each conference are getting automatic qualification for Europe, and I think they dropped down into fourth, I think, as a result of the Christmas results. Is that right?
I don't know. I can
yeah,
check
I
that
think. But either way, they're thereabouts for automatic qualification.
Still third.
So it's a huge carrot for Connacht. You know, we can't really underestimate when you look at what's happened with United and Mourinho and Solskjaer, and obviously with a slightly lesser focus globally on Connacht Rugby last year, where they weren't a happy camp with Kieran Keane.
Yeah. And
just the change in management, what it's done to invigorate or reinvigorate a lot of key players down there. Happy players generally are better players, and guys who are given opportunities and feel positive going into work every day are generally guys who will perform better. And I think Connacht have managed to change that and develop that from Kieran Keane's reign. I think it's showing.
Yeah, and the value for them for being consistently in the Heineken Cup would just be transformative, particularly when you're trying to put a new ground together and just remind everybody that this is a viable business, and we actually have a fourth professional team that not that is a question anymore, but that it had been a question for so long that, like, if they're not qualifying for the Heineken Cup every year as a matter of course, then they're nowhere near as useful to Irish rugby as they could be.
Yeah, well, they've also generated a lot of goodwill and momentum and support down in Galway City. Like, when I was playing down in Connacht, you know, you'd do well to get a couple of thousand at a match. That was, albeit 10 years ago. But now...
What was that like? Was there a sense, like, that you weren't connected to the city?
Well, no, it was just a sense that it wasn't... At the time, it felt rugby wasn't the priority down there. And very understandably so. But now I suppose you're looking at a time when you know, Galway hurlers, but I suppose that's more the outskirts of the county in Galway as opposed to the city. It's just that the city identifies with a sporting team of success.
Did you live in Galway, or would you have commuted back and forth?
I lived in Galway, I lived in East Galway, East City of part of Galway, in Roscommon,
Did people know you were a rugby player?
No. People didn't know I was a rugby player in England or Leinster either. So it didn't bother me at that stage.
No, but it's just interesting, you know, it's like, there's Andy, he plays for Connacht. It's like,
I don't think that would have been the case particularly. Not really, no. You could have stood beside anyone in O'Connell's having a pint, and they wouldn't have known the difference. But the modern day Connacht player probably can't do that, or if they can, they're recognised.
Which is it. I mean, that's the
that's a huge positive.
The transformation of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And where Ulster at the moment? What's the?
Yeah, I think Ulster. I suppose to counter argue where we are with Munster, for example, and that. I suppose trying to find an identity and style with which they play. I think Ulster have carved out a very clear identity in terms of what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to play. They've embraced risk. They play a lot of offloads. They've got a few of them wrong. They've shipped a few bad results as a result, but they're improving. And I think it's very much a model that Dan McFarlane's brought over from his experience with Townsend in Glasgow and then in Scotland. And I think it's quite progressive. I think it's very positive for Irish rugby, and I think Ulster rugby, I suppose, is walking to a whole different beat and rhythm compared to last year, which wouldn't be hard.
Yeah,
In a weird way, it's kind of like the flip side of Munster almost. I know you made the comparison there, but in terms of the areas of the pitch they needed to focus on, because Munster traditionally quite strong up front, and then you're saying that it's the identity of the backs they need to work on, whereas Ulster last season in particular were just getting destroyed up front all the time, and they're potentially world-class backs in a lot of positions last year, in particular like with the likes of Leila Ifano, just weren't getting the opportunities because they were getting killed. Are you looking at a scrum this year that is far better in the long run, that is holding its own and can go toe-to-toe with the best in Europe?
Yeah, I think the most instructive thing I heard or read about the Ulster forward pack in recent history was Rory Best's comments coming back from the Six Nations, where he said it just felt very, very different. I mean, it was a very pointed and marked, probably, criticism of his teammates, and he is the captain and it's his right to do that. But he said previously, going away to Irish camp in November, when I came back, it felt like the guys had been on a bit of a holiday. When he went into a set scrum and a training scrum, having come back from a Joe Schmidt camp, he said it was a notable drop in intensity and concentration levels. This time,
get the coaches as well.
Yeah, but this time he came back from the November internationals and he said they were right at the pitch and level that he expected and wanted from them. So there's probably no better indication from your hooker in the middle of the front row and captain to demonstrate change that is happening up there, positive change, and again being coached by a guy like Dan, who is a self-confessed scrum nerd, and you know, if there's going to be a strength in his coaching armoury, it's got to be the scrum. He played there probably for 10-15 seasons as a professional, coached as a scrum specialist before he developed into assistant coach roles and his first head coach role now. So absolutely that's a positive aspect of Ulster's development, yeah.
Okay, a couple of quick comments for you here. Connacht destroying Ulster was a fantastic highlight, says Darren O'Toole, hashtag OTBAM. Niall G, the bite is back, ? The bite was never gone. I'm sure if you ask any Leinster or Munster player, they would tell you that. Well, let's just wait and see what happens in the coming years. Dean Purcell says, I think the game has almost saved the rivalry. If Leinster ran away with it or even won by a score or two, it would have been another nail in the coffin of the fixture. The Aviva should be rammed next year. Assuming they pick their full teams.
Yes, yeah. And it was quite circumstantial, I think, that they picked the full teams this year. I don't think they just, on a whim, decided they're both going to pick full sides. Yeah. It's just as the season has panned out, as the Conference League table develops, as the demands of the Irish management and the way things are set up, it just happened to be good timing, and they both went full sides, apart from O'Mahony, obviously, and a couple of Leinster injuries. But it would be great, seeing as they don't play each other that regularly, to see two fully stacked sides, but I don't think it's going to be that regular an occurrence.
Morris Reardon has an interesting question here. Yeah. Why do you guys think it's so difficult for opposition teams to stay within the rules of the game when playing against Munster? The Cast game and the Leinster game being prime examples of this. Is it something that's happening in reaction to the way Munster play, both dominated around the ruck area, and perhaps frustration at that carried over? I mean, that is a bit of victim blaming there by Morris, but,
Your tone would suggest you agree with it, Ger.
I'm just saying it's an interesting question.
Well, I suppose he's, the likes of Tyg Byrne, for example, who's so strong over the tackler and is a guy that's very hard to shift. Fellas might be a bit more aggressive in terms of how they enter the ruck to clear the likes of Tyg Byrne, but I don't think as a general rule, Munster's style of play is predicating bad behaviour from everybody else.
What does Tyg Byrne have to do now to get in the Ireland team? Does he have to kill somebody? Because
not a lot, I would have thought. He's damn close. He's it's just strength and depth in terms of that position, though. I mean, Toner was outstanding in the New Zealand game. Ryan has been outstanding in almost every professional game he's played.
Yeah. Even in defeat, he was pretty good.
Yeah, and it's,
he's got that thing where...
It's very hard to argue Byrne gets in ahead of either of them on top form, but he's damn close. And, it's pretty tough for Tyg Byrne, because in recent 10 to 15 years, we've had O'Connell, we've had O'Callaghan, we've had Mal O'Kelly. It's been a position we've been strong in, but I would have thought at other points in history he'd have been a shoe-in to start in an Irish team based on his current form. He just happens to be behind Ryan and Toner at the moment.
Ryan has this thing where, those old assault courses where you would go under the net, where you can kind of just do that. Even though he's, 1,000 foot tall and everybody's trying to tackle him, he can just crawl along the ground.
I'm not sure, did you see Brian O'Driscoll's tweet the other day? His question was, can James Ryan carry like he does for 10 or 12 years? I'm not sure. The punishment he takes, his ability to make 2 or 3 yards when he has no right to, is unrivaled. Well, with maybe the exception of CJ, he says.
Well, I think there's a slight contradiction in that, in terms of Brian's tweet, and that can he carry like that for 10 to 12 years? He's not taking a lot of punishment because of the way he carries. If he carried differently, he'd keep running into people. That's what all the other players do. He avoids contact better than anyone. So by that rationale, he's not taking as much punishment. If he was just running directly into the traffic, like most of his peers, he'd take a lot more punishment. So I actually think it will elongate his career the way he plays, to avoid contact. He, like you said, the assault course, the capacity to drop his height from 6'6" to 1'6" is remarkable. But also, I think there's a lot in terms of his game intelligence, his anticipation of lines to run, to attack space, his almost telepathic relationship at times with either Conor Murray or Luke McGrath, in terms of they seem to pick him out off the side of a ruck where they can't pick anyone else out in space. So there's a lot to his game that goes, I suppose, underappreciated as well. But I'd actually disagree with Brian to a degree on that. It'll be hard for him to carry and play at that level for 10 to 12 years, but I don't think it's relentlessly physical on his body to avoid contact.
Sure.
Did Luke McGrath do enough in that game to be number 2?
Well, probably not, but neither are any of the other number 2s. I can't quite fathom why all Irish scrum halves are box kicking 5 metres ahead of themselves in our own 22. That includes Conor Murray, Luke McGrath, Kieran Marmion. I don't know why we're doing that when we've got a lot of 10s who could stand in the pocket and drill at 60 metres.
Yeah.
It's nonsensical. It's a strategy and tactic that's been used for about 18 months relentlessly in Irish rugby. And I don't get it.
Is it a direction from on high?
Well, if it was, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, at best, you're get a 50-50 chance to recover the ball with wingers chasing it. If you lose the ball, the opposition have it 5 metres further down the field.
Yeah.
I don't get it. You give it to your 10, kick it 60 metres, give up the 50-50 battle for possession, and trust your defence 50 metres down the field. So
you remove the risk that one of your players might get sent off.
Yes.
That's an added fringe benefit of that. Let's a quick look at the fixtures coming up this weekend on Air Sport. Connacht against Ulster. That's obviously done. It's the bottom 3 here, yeah. So Leinster Ulster, the 5th. Today's the 2nd, so I guess that makes that Saturday.
It says it there as well.
There you go. That was helpful, yeah.
It's a the glasses.
Happy New Year to everybody. The other game on Saturday is Connacht against Munster, kicking off at 7:35. So 5:15 kick-off for Leinster against Ulster on Air Sport 1, followed by Connacht against Munster also on Air Sport 1 this weekend. Andy, good stuff. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Darren.
So we're going to win the World Cup this year. That's how this conversation finishes. That's how every conversation should finish up until.
We've the best chance we've ever had.
I mean, yeah,
definitely. But my concern is the amount of rucks we take to win a game. That's my only concern. We average about 140 relative to the other. Our peer kind of top 4 or 5 teams in the world are averaging about 80 rucks to win an international.
Right.
So
that's
the counter argument. I mean, we've about 55, 60 more rucks than our surrounding competition to win a game, which is pretty high amount of workload extra to back do that 6 times in a row, 7 times in a row to win a World Cup is going to be hard. But the counter argument is we're very good at it. We're very good at maintaining possession, and we've got strength and depth, probably 3 deep in most positions, which could sustain playing that way.
Yeah. So it's like
it's very feasible.
Operation Human Shield is the first team that goes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Andy, good stuff. Thanks very much. So Gary Breen was at Arsenal against Fulham for Premier League Live. He discussed Arsenal's mentality and the challenge that Unai Emery faces to turn the club around. Have a look.
Well, if you were asking me what would my scenario have been as a player, then I would be thinking, listen, I need to just play as hard as I can, blah, blah, blah. But if you're asking me to comment on what these Arsenal players, I expect exactly what you just said. They're looking over their shoulder because they've had it so easy for so long here. And this is not to suggest they're not good players. Yes, they are. But they're the most self-rewarding group of players you've ever seen in your life, in terms of they win one game, selfies, this, they think they're the big I am, and they get put back in their place. I think Emery will be looking to strengthen them. Whether or not he can get those type of players in January remains to be seen, because the quality ones are not often available. But having said that, I don't think Arsenal will have millions to spend, but there's no doubt that this work in progress desperately needs a couple of transfer windows to fix the problems that they have here.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like he knows that, though, at least, and is trying to do it, which would be a significant change from the Wenger era, right?
Yeah, it would. It's been a despondent couple of days for us big Emery faithful over the last couple of weeks. But
Then they bounce back, no?
well, they did, but it's still the lingering thing of like it was so Wenger losing to Liverpool in that fashion.
It's Christmas. Stuff happens at Christmas.
Stuff happens at Christmas.
You'll be grand. Darren, how are you?
Stuff happens at Christmas, the theme of the day. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Did a lot of stuff happen to you at Christmas?
Not a whole lot. It was quiet.
Your mic is muted there. We're having a great. This is why we come back to work when you aren't back at work, so that we can make these mistakes and I can't read the day of the week.
Oh, and it's troubleshooting. Has the troubleshooting worked?
It has.
There we go.
Darren, how are you?
Try that again. Take 2 of live television.
We'll fix that in post.
Yeah, I'm very well.
Good Christmas.
Quiet, the Christmas word of the day. I think everyone will say quiet when asked how their Christmas was.
Yeah.
Because what would be the point of getting into detail?
That would be a lie.
Let me tell you about all of the family fights we had about insignificant stuff. And no, quiet is the best right answer.
Yeah.
Quiet and sports felt. And we will hear from Owen's hero, Unai Emery, in a moment. It was a happy new year, though, for Spurs fans. They started 2019 with a win. Mauricio Pochettino's men are up to second in the Premier League table after beating Cardiff by 3-0. Pochettino pleased by the fact that they managed to bounce back quickly from their recent shock defeat to Wolves.
I'm so happy. I think very pleased with the performance. I think we started the game so well. We were so clinical from the beginning. After 20 minutes, 3-0, I think was a fantastic result for us. 3 points that make us to believe a little bit more in our possibility to be in a very good position on the table.
I don't know who had the line, but Spurs had a title challenge that lasted shorter than the Christmas ham. It's like... It was
a Spursy title challenge.
It was very Spursy.
So harsh. Well, if you listen to Graham Souness yesterday, this title challenge is absolutely not done. He says that they're very much still in the mix, and when Graham Souness speaks, I tend to listen. And I'm starting to... Okay, there's no question they've got nowhere near the depth that Liverpool and Manchester City have, which ultimately is what is going to lose you a title challenge. If they get injuries in certain positions, they're screwed, and we've seen it before. Or if their best player so far this season has to go and represent his country for the next couple of weeks, which isn't ideal either. But when you look at it in the face of it, like if you look at sort of their world-class talent versus the rest of the world-class talent up near the top of the table,
it's pretty good.
It's not a hell of a lot behind.
No.
So they would need to get remarkably lucky when it comes to injuries, suspensions, etc., and need to come back from the Son return with a 100% record, and then we could potentially make an argument that the title race is on.
But last season and the season before, it actually kind of felt like the team that finished second, they didn't really feel like runners-up because it wasn't really a race. So it could be a case of they might finish second, but never really be...
Yeah, they rose to second position from like March, April onwards.
But never really be in the hunt.
Yeah, like it was the Leicester season they finished second, right? And like I think definitely at this position that we've been speaking about Spurs in a much more serious manner. And it does kind of leave open the question to Mauricio Pochettino's future when he's looking around at, and I'm not just talking about Manchester United, potentially at Real Madrid. Of course, the Madrid job is a vastly different one to the situation he might be in at United. So I'm not sure. There is kind of a sense here that this idea that Spurs are onto something used to be such a patronising tone about to Spurs fans, I'd imagine. Whereas now it's like, no, they really are onto something. They are close to launching a real title challenge.
Just about to screw it all up.
Yeah.
Has he done a better job than Mourinho did at United during a spell there?
Who?
Pochettino at Spurs.
Oh, way better, yeah.
Than Mourinho at United?
Yeah. I mean, if you were talking earlier about the currency of not winning anything, if you were to look at the currency of trophies and that being the only measure of success or the only measure of success that matters in modern football, is there an argument to be made that
Mourinho did a better job?
That is a hot take. That is a hot take starting off 29. I would have thought there would have been no question about that, as Pochettino has certainly been a far more successful Premier League manager than
on the
Jose
metrics
at United.
on the metrics of success.
Yeah, overachieving.
O'Neill's interview, Martin O'Neill did an interview with Luke Edwards just before Christmas, really interesting, where he tried to bring a bit of perspective to what Mourinho did at United by saying people decide that the trophies he won didn't matter because he didn't win the Premier League, but at the same time this is a guy who has won more trophies than most of the other managers in the league, except for the one that won the Premier League, Pep Guardiola, in the last year.
If you look at the relative positions that both managers took over from, like Mourinho hasn't vastly improved the team from Van Gaal, who won a cup, right? Not the Europa League, but what Pochettino has done is restore Spurs to a level where they're credible. We're talking about them having a credible title challenge, which they haven't been a proper title challenge team It's the 60s? Really?
It's the last time they won it.
Like, I mean, there was a season Clive Allen scored 45 league goals, and I don't think they were credible title challengers.
Like when they won the
year
cup in the 90s. Like, was that a league challenging team?
No, I mean, did they challenge for the league really under Harry? They didn't. They barely scraped into fourth one year. So, like, I mean, that's a remarkable job. He's also managed to convince some of the best footballers in England to play for less money than they should. That's insane.
But now he's got to walk the walk and say, I'm going to manage at this club for less money than I could get at Manchester
I'm
United.
going to take the same money that you were going to give to everybody else, and because mine's the one that's, you know, and my rising tide will lift all boats.
So where are you on the overall argument of...
Pochettino slams Jose Mourinho in a celebrity death match, rips his head off and goes...
Do you need the medals to prove it?
No, I don't need the medals to prove it.
I need the mere process of management, and so far Solskjaer looks like he can get the best out of Paul Pogba and Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial, and potentially the big one is up next, Alexis Sanchez. It's a tricky second album for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer right now.
That would be amazing. I do feel like we're in the Stan 3-0 win over Sweden. There's like a
honeymoon period for sure. There's no question about that.
So let's see what happens.
I saw a really funny, I don't know, a meme or just a funny Man United fans' observation or Liverpool fans' observation of what a job Ole's done. You know, when he started, they were in 6th, 19 points behind Liverpool, 3 wins on the trot, and they're 6th and 19 points behind Liverpool. Completely remarkable. Leicester go back to winning ways with a 1-0 victory at Everton. Arsenal beat Fulham by 4-1. That victory followed the 5-1 humbling at the hands of Liverpool. Manager Unai Emery feels they're still lacking defensively, and he wants to get a defender in the transfer window.
We conceded some chances from then. We want to continue defensively, being more consistently. But at the moment, in the balance, because we are scoring a lot, but the balance is not enough at the moment because defensively we need better balance. The club is watching each possibility if we have one opportunity with one different player and can come and help us. We are going to watch, but it's not easy.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looks to maintain his 100% record as the Manchester United interim manager this evening. They travel to Newcastle. Burnley manager Sean Dyche hopeful that Robbie Brady could be fit for their trip to Huddersfield. Elsewhere, Chelsea take on Southampton. Bournemouth entertain Watford. Brighton make the trip to West Ham, and Wolves play Crystal Palace. Leeds remain 2 clear at the top of the championship table this morning despite losing last night. Former Republic of Ireland striker Darrell Murphy, the hero, he got a goal and set up the winner for Nottingham Forest. They beat Leeds by 4-2. Norwich closed the gap with a 1-1 draw at Brentford. They're second now on 49 points. Ireland striker David McGoldrick scored to help Sheffield United win 3-0 at Wigan. That moves them up to third place. Bristol City won 2-0 at Stoke. Republic of Ireland midfielder Callum O'Dowda netted in that game. Well, in rugby, Sean Cronin admits things probably got out of hand against Munster. The Ireland hooker was a spectator for the fiery Interpro derby, but admits his teammates were bitterly disappointed with how they handled the occasion and acquitted themselves. He's quoted in the Irish Times saying, "Our discipline wasn't good enough. We played nearly 60 minutes down a man and we'd another man gone as well. We're never going to win games away from home against quality opposition like Munster with a penalty count of well over 10. He also noted that it was probably just sloppiness and not any malice that led to some of the indisciplined scenes we saw. Those sentiments echoed by Johnny Sexton in the aftermath of that game.
Having that clear thought process in like a red hot environment here, you know, it's a very special place to play, and you can either rise to the challenge or you can, you know, walk out the gate. Like, you know, some teams come here and get beaten and no hands up, and we didn't do that, and I'm proud of the lads for how we stuck in there. But you know, you can't blame any one person for you know, the cards, because like I explained before, you know, no one went out to high tackle someone or no one went out to take someone out in the air. It's just, you know, us need to be better in this environment where you don't do those things.
Now, Michael van Gerwen is celebrating this morning after claiming his third PDC World Darts Championship title. The world number 1 beat Michael Smith 7-3 in the final at London's Alexandra Palace last night. The Dutchman raced into a 4-0 lead before Smith took 5 successive legs to make it 4-2. Victory, though, takes van Gerwen to second in the list of PDC World Championship title wins. He is way off the record of 14, though, set by Phil Taylor. In golf, Rory McIlroy says loyalty to the European Tour will not be a factor when he decides what tournaments he'll be playing in this year. The 4-time major winner won't play in Europe until at least the summer, and says his priority will be ranking points and prize money in 2019. He's quoted as saying, "A lot of guys have this sort of loyalty to the European Tour. which is great, but it's not as if we all get handed starts. We've got to qualify to get on. My life is here. I live in the States. My wife is American. Everything is moving this way in the world. It just makes sense. The UFC president Dana White has teased a rematch between Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov to take place in 2019. The Russian beat the Dubliner via submission in their lightweight title fight last October. A brawl, though, after the bout led to suspensions for both fighters. White says the promotion are eager to arrange a rematch, but must first wait until the fighters are cleared by the Nevada State Athletic Commission.
I think a lot of people want to see that fight. We got to see how this thing, obviously, again, we still haven't gone before the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Yeah. That's got to happen. And when that does, we can figure out how this whole thing plays out. Is Max moving to 55? Tony Ferguson, obviously, in the mix. Yeah. So we got to see how this thing plays out.
Just on that, right before so we'll get to the breaking news in a minute. Nobody wants to see this fight again, do they?
Oh, yeah.
Do you?
Absolutely.
What? It's going to be another one-sided. McGregor can't. It's not even a fight.
It's money.
But I mean, like,
it will dwarf the record set at the last pay-per-view. Like, UFC fans would probably want to see Max Holloway involved, or maybe Tony Ferguson, but the generic fight fan, the Conor McGregor fans, the generic public would prefer to see McGregor and Nurmagomedov again.
Darren's right in terms of the general populace.
Would they not rather see like Nate Diaz or, you know?
But like that's exactly it.
But that'd be a trilogy decider. I can understand that. Like at least it's a bit closer. But like
that's the correct combat sports decision. The correct entertainment decision and business decision is probably to put them up.
But he'll lose again. Then it's like, well,
it's not a correct decision for McGregor either.
It's been a long time since.
I think from Dana White wants this to happen.
To remove the power of McGregor to reduce it further.
But what if he doesn't lose?
True as well.
Like the last fight went the way most.
That's
people,
like, what if we win the Euros and we have to keep Mick McCarthy?
There's more chance of Conor McGregor winning than us winning the Euros. But the last fight, it was down to the fact that if it went any kind of distance, the longer it went on, the more chance Nurmagomedov had of winning it. But Conor McGregor changed like the UFC with a punch. He was one of the most powerful hitters and strikers in the game. He had an ability to end fights in a way that was game changing, not just for him but for that entire company. So the idea that it would be of no interest, not just to the general public but to fight fans, is crazy. I think even fight fans would like to see McGregor and Nurmagomedov go again to see if Conor can actually do that thing where he can shock the world with one punch.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a knockout thing though that you'd be looking for, which again, I'd say there's about as much chance of that happening as there is of Ireland winning the Euros. But anyway, there is some breaking football news.
Yeah, Darren's going to bring us to the rest of the GAA in just a moment, but Christian Pulisic's move to Chelsea has been confirmed for £58 million this morning. He's going to stay with Borussia Dortmund until the end of the season. And
he's only 20, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, obviously he was brilliant last season. He hasn't really lived up to the first season hype. He's American, which obviously makes his profile, it enhances his profile to a certain extent, to the extent that he's actually their next Freddie Adu. He is the single biggest thing that American soccer fans are hanging their
Freddie Adu never made it.
Well, true. Okay. Christian Pulisic has already had a better career than Freddie Adu.
Yeah, miles better. Yeah.
The thing
he's an American that wants to play in Europe, not like McIlroy.
It's very true. Like it's an interesting kind of a whole political element to this in terms of Chelsea. Daniel Story, a football writer, just saw his tweets this morning, which kind of give food for thought. So Chelsea are signing 20-year-old Christian Pulisic for €64 million, which may force the 18-year-old Callum Hudson-Odoi to seek a move for £25 million. Both are extremely highly rated, but you do wonder if the two players were switched around, whether exactly the same would happen. And I really would. It would be a great experiment to take all the promising kids from the academies, put them into the Bundesliga, into the Premier League, into La Liga, into Serie A, and into Ligue 1, and see who makes it where. See how restricted the Premier League is to a youngster's progress, particularly with one of the top 6 clubs. I think there's a valid point in that.
Yeah. It's a fair point. I think a lot of the thing about development is that the most meaningful way to develop young players is to have them actually playing for points. It's why most of the academy system seems to be flawed in that they're playing in these reserve leagues that don't really matter. I think it's better for players' development if they go off somewhere and play maybe even lower leagues.
Well, if you look
play
at
in matches that matter.
Tammy Abraham has been absolutely amazing for Villa. Just like every time you look up, sometimes he's missing, but generally he's like scoring 2 goals a game at the moment, and
instead of playing reserve matches
for Chelsea. Yeah. So like he's got a clause in his contract apparently that he can break the loan deal with Villa and join a Premier League team. So he'll probably get a move to the Premier League now and then get a move to somewhere else. Now, I don't know if they're always automatically going to be any good. Has Iheanacho been any good since he left City?
Not really. Like the thing is, he is.
I was surprised he left City because he did really, really well for half a season.
Yeah, like
he was scoring when he was playing.
He is also behind Jamie Vardy in a system that really only rewards one striker. And
he's only 22. Check his age there as well. And Tammy Abrams 21. So there's definitely different ways to do this, but you see the benefit of getting games.
No question about it. I'll be mildly surprised if Christian Pulisic has a massive season for Chelsea next year. Of course, there has to be patience with a player of his age, but
well, he's the long-term replacement for Eden Hazard, isn't he?
Well, that's the thing.
You hope to get a season with Hazard showing Pulisic this is what you're supposed to be doing, and then he joins Real Madrid, and then you already have your player, and you've only spent 60 million on him instead of spending 120 million on him. But you can then sell him to plus
Chelsea becoming a selling club. Then
all of that sweet marketing money that you get from the States,
and it's a great way of actually maturing a player. Like you mentioned Tammy Abraham there, and the actual fact that if he goes and plays matches that matter, and he's not just with 18, 19, 20-year-old lads playing reserve matches, that, the points are important, but at the same time, they don't matter in the context of what a championship match means. And you're learning from older pros, and you're maturing in a way that you just won't get at the academy system. I think there's a lot to be said for playing those senior matches and playing alongside guys you can learn from, instead of being in an echo chamber with kids your own age, where it's very hard to mature if you're surrounded by people who are young, naive, and still not maturing in the way they could be if they were in an environment with older people.
And there's no doubt that somewhere along the way Chelsea have a buyback clause at a very reasonable rate. If they, if say they sell Tammy Abraham to somebody else, they'll be able to buy him back at some point.
Now, finally, Gaelic games. The new rules for Gaelic football making headlines once again today after being labelled crazy by the Mayo football manager James Horan. He's preparing to take charge for the first game of his second stint. They opened their FBD League campaign this Sunday. That's against Leitrim. He's expressed concerns about the new rules and feels referees are the real losers.
Let's see how they are. I wouldn't be a fan of them. I think they're a little bit crazy, to be honest, and I don't know what we're trying to do with the referees. How they're going to be refereed, I just don't know. You've seen it in quite a lot of the games already where they've been used. They're going to be a struggle. So I'm not sure what's going to be brought in for the National League. So we just have to wait and see. But we have to play with what's there. So we've done a little bit of work on it and make sure the players understand it. And we'll play whatever's happening.
This is something we've been speaking about, obviously, for the past couple of months, but with every bigger profile of manager that comes along and says something about it, it suddenly becomes a much bigger story. And, I don't know, you do have to feel a lot of sympathy for GAA managers in terms of the situation that they're in, that, of course, there is this long-term gain, and you do need a bit of short-term pain sometimes to achieve that goal, and that might be the sort of situation that we're in now, where we've got uncertainty around the rules. But ultimately, James Horan doesn't care about long-term game. He cares about preparing as best he possibly can for the 2019 league. Mayo don't have time to wait. They don't have time to be a passenger on this bus of rules going who knows where. And that was a weird metaphor, but it's
a great metaphor. That's like speed. It's going out of control, and it's hope that somehow it will stop. But no one knows how to stop it.
Where nobody knows where the hell it's going, and nobody knows when it's going to end. And it might end before the league. It might end after the league. Who knows? Either way, Mayo have a big league coming up this year. They almost got relegated last year, and I get the whole idea that sometimes we just need to take it on the chin for a little while, but I'm sure Mayo fans are like, no, we can't be part of this guinea pig experiment.
But if you really want to try and make some change that's meaningful and at the same time not hugely disruptive to the game as a whole, why not look at bringing in a second referee? Why not have two people to try and enforce the rules that we have, or try and enforce the...
At inter-county level only?
You wouldn't be able to do it at any other level other than inter-county.
And that's the whole... Got to have the same rules.
But you can't change the entire game of football because the championship's been boring for 2 or 3 years.
That's why they're doing it. Instead of addressing, it's terrible that we keep talking about this crap instead of going, the system is flawed, fix the system, and then come back to us about the rules. Pit teams who are of equal standard up against each other and let them work out a style of play. And if you're progressive, you're going to win. If you're not progressive, you'll get found out, and you're county will replace you as the manager, and the playing style will change. It's really easy.
I know the rules are for trial, and then it will be seen if they work. Then they will come forth to meaningful change around the game. But it's absolutely bonkers that to fix the senior inter-county game or try to address some of the issues that have made the senior inter-county game a less interesting spectacle, that you would change the game of football for everyone that kicks the ball in the country.
Instead of just changing the
But the GAA will tell you they can't change it because they are bound senselessly to rules that they write and control. It's like the Porky Queeve thing all over. Well, our rules which we write and we police say we can't do it. Well, then change the rules.
I see Kevin Walsh was also out talking about this over the last 24 hours or so and saying the old chestnut that there's a couple of pundits that control the narrative. I actually don't understand why people who refer to a couple of pundits don't just say Bradley Spillane and Colin O'Rourke.
Yeah.
Like, we all know who you're talking about, just say the name. And like, you do wonder if, like, we often refer to the GAA as quite a stubborn organisation, but a stubborn organisation couldn't be that impressionable to three men, surely? Or could they? I don't know. I'm leaving that one out there.
But they have.
I don't know the correct answer to that question.
If they want to fix the product, their marquee product, which is the senior football and inter-county hurling championships, obviously you don't need to do anything with hurling because it's been the most spectacular hurling season on memory. But if you want to change the football, absolutely no issue with changing it. But to do so in such a panicky way of, shit, what do we do? Let's just do this and this and this and this and this. And we've got 5 new rules where 2 of them you can kind of get on board and say, yeah, look, that will actually increase it as an attacking spectacle, limit the amount of hand passes.
When are these rule changes happening? What's the window we're going to see? Are we going to see any championship matches with them? Oh no, wait, hang on a second. We'll do the pre-season. We'll definitely do the league as well. Oh, you can't do the league, so the players are like, okay, we won't do the league. Maybe we'll do the league. We're not sure. We might do the league. And now the managers don't know. And the manager's like, what? What rules are we playing this goddamn league under? That's a bit insane.
It is. It's nuts.
The calendar year, we're going for the whole calendar year. That's it. Done deal. Decision made. This year's championship might have an asterisk after it. Maybe that's going to stop the 5 in a row. Who knows? But at least we're all planning for the whole thing.
I heard a story there last week that one county had sought a referee's briefing to have a referee's briefing to try and, when they do resume training, have some idea of what's happening. So get a referee to come down to training and brief them on what's happening. But they couldn't facilitate a briefing from the referees because referees hadn't been briefed yet.
Yeah. Nobody's been briefed yet.
Which is laughable.
Some comments about the Coleman-Doherty, which is the new debate in Irish sport. I mean, we'll change that pretty quickly, but don't worry. Christy Coleman-Doherty is Carr, Finnan, Kelly, Mark II. McCarthy either played Finnan left back or on the right side of midfield. I suspect he'll do the same with Doherty, says Brian McDonald. How you doing, Brian? James Gill says, why not do what was done with Eoin and move one to left back? I mean, it's not the worst idea.
No.
Let's see what Matt Doherty's like at left back.
You wouldn't move Seamus Coleman to left back?
I think I'd move Matt Doherty left back.
Well, like I've certainly never seen him play there, so it's hard to tell. Like, the thing with Matt Doherty is that his strength is obviously.
Back for 2 seasons, Doherty did.
The thing is, the strength of Matt Doherty is coming onto the ball. It's like if you play Matt Doherty at right midfield, he'd be a hell of a lot worse than him at left back, for example.
I mean, can't you just work it so that you get the ball and you give it and then you do a little Sexton loop and then you're coming onto it? I mean, surely you can work this out. You're smart. You've got like big brains and lots of time to chat about. You're going to get the ball in a slightly different position on the right side of midfield. If you needed to be coming on, work out a way with Coleman and the midfield so that you can position it. That's like, it's doable.
But like, I don't buy into this idea that Coleman is in any danger of losing his place at international level, because a lot of
he's the ringleader for this.
But a lot of the players we have,
I didn't say he should lose
Matt Doherty's booster in chief,
aren't playing regularly in their teams. Like, most of the time O'Neill picked a team, he was playing with guys and he constantly referred to it that they don't play regularly in upper club football, but when they come to Ireland they play very well, so that is why I played them. I think Coleman's probably the victim of his own success in that he's had a remarkable stretch of consistency and being a regular player, and at his first dip in form or serious dip in form, it's like we're so quick to jettison him. It's crazy.
I'm not saying to jettison him, I'm saying it should be a consideration for the management. That if you were going to play a flat back 4 and it's between Coleman and Matt Doherty, you just have to consider it. It's simple as that. I'm not saying, like, if I was making the decision, chances are I might fall down and decide to Seamus Coleman and pick him, but I'm certainly considering Matt Doherty.
Well, you consider him the same way you'd consider Cyrus Christie, or you consider...
He's better than Cyrus Christie.
Yeah, but you consider everyone when you're playing, surely. But at the same time, the idea that because his club have decided that his form is not good enough to pick him, that's fine, that's understandable, but he's never put a foot wrong for Ireland.
No, absolutely,
So
and
give
that's
him
why
a chance.
that's why I'm not saying to jettison him.
If he plays poorly for Ireland, then it's a different conversation. It's a different consideration. But he's a guy that has always given everything for his country, and I don't think we should jettison him. I think we should give him a chance to prove his form. Certainly, Matt Doherty should be in the conversation. But
good thing nobody has said this morning to jettison him. So that's the positive.
Everton fans are ready to jettison him.
Yeah.
All right, a reminder that Off the Ball is back on the airwaves from 7 o'clock tonight on News Talk. Brian just goes in studio for Wednesday Night Rugby. There's all of tonight's football to bring you through as well. We're back tomorrow morning on OTB AM from 7:45 AM. You can watch us live on YouTube, on Facebook or on Twitter. You can listen live over at offtheball.com. We fixed it now so that you can just listen to the show and get about the rest of your daily business, and the sound should continue. You can podcast the show from 10 a.m. on iTunes or on Spotify or wherever it is that you get your pods, and of course you can check out our brand new home, offtheball.com, for all your sports needs. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.